You're going to need a bigger boat.
Welcome back, LSFL family. I am here. The Commish is here. And of course, I got Gingerbread here with me as well. We are here to give you the final Shark Tank for the 2023 LSFL season. Unfortunately, some people's commitment is a little stronger than others. So we apologize for the tardiness of our show this week, but we got a lot to get into. Listen, it's the end of the 2023 season. What a great season it was. Started out in Vegas. What a great time we had. We'll never, ever forget that good time. I wish you bums would agree to going to each Super Bowl city each year, just travel this fantasy draft because it's so much fun. But be that as it may, maybe when we get a little older, we can start doing stuff like that. But anyway, let's get back to it again. End of the regular season last week, week 13. Let's take a look at these scores. The Sharks beating the Rattlers 154 to 114. I just want to say, Jose, give me best shot, man. I mean, that was for sure. I just happened to have a good week, thankfully, because I want to close out that number one seed. But Jose, really good shot. And it's a shame because when you look down, we know what happened with Jose. If you look down, look at the scoreboard, the guy that he was going against, the Jets, I mean, only put 78 points up, but just happened to run into the Predators, who had some injuries, unfortunately, for the last game of the season. So they pulled out the victory there. El Dorados keeping pace, wanting to keep pace with the Sharks, looking for that three-time LSFL champion three-peat, 104 to 99.4 against the Grimace, one of the hottest teams in the LSFL. Speaking of hot teams, 6 wins in a row for the Bombers going into the fantasy playoffs, looking strong against the Dragons, who are on the opposite end of that. Fortunately stumbled into, well, we'll talk about that in a second, but stumbled in. At least the Jesters taking care of, thankfully, because the Jesters for the Dragons took care of the Massacre for him. That's how he stumbled in. Jesters 103 to the Massacre's 99.5. And damn, if luck wasn't part of Nick's thing, I mean, geez, oh, please. First, Christian Kirk, I was already like, oh, man, that's got to hurt. I was already feeling for him. And then when T-Law went down, it was just like, oh, my God, this guy cannot seem to win anything. So, unfortunately, for Nick, that was a no win there. And then we get to the big score of the week, the Bucks. They said, you know what? I'm trying to get in these playoffs. And I'm going to show you how much. I'm going to close it out with a team of the week. Great job from AJ. Big week 156.4. That goes down, and we'll talk about that in a second on the accolades. But that does go down as this season's highest scoring game. And then the number 2, ironically enough, was also from this week. It was me with 154.6. Crazy enough. All right, look at these AFC standings as we finish things up. Again, let's look at these hot teams. Now, I put the Grimace wrong there with his win total. But the Bucks have won 4 in a row. 3 in a row. 6 losses for the Goats to close the season out. But the Grimace do take the AFC West, as we know. Sharks, we already knew, was there. Did secure home field advantage with the win. Even if he lost to Jose, though, end up with the Grimace losing, would have been number 1 seed regardless. But good way to go into the playoffs is on a win streak. Same with the El Dorados. And we were just talking about Jose and, unfortunately, the Goats as well. In the NFC, again, just talked about it, one of the hottest teams in the league, 6 wins in a row to get to this playoffs. So 6 wins. Let's talk about the Bombers for a second. 3-4. I mean, look at it. Take those 6 wins away. They were 3-4. I mean, it don't take a lot of math to figure that out. With 6 straight wins. Damn, that's how you get into the playoffs. That's how you pull that nose up from the nosedive of the season and go in strong. Jesters 8-5, making it, again, started out hot. They looked like they were going to be the kings of the North and kind of started, not a nosedive towards the end, but, a little bit of some stumbles here and there as the season went on, but especially through the NFC. And, you could see with the Dragons as well, what really hurt them was the play of the Bombers, 4-0 in the division, both of them at 1-3. So there you go, right there. 3 losses in your division is not a good way to get into the playoffs. Predators 8-5. He's had a strong team all year. Had one bad game here at the end, but quite frankly, only thing that really stopped him was getting the home field advantage. He'll still get the one bye, at least for the 1 week, and then going into the next week, if he wins, he'll go into the next week against the Bombers. But been strong all year. Massacre, again, did pretty much what Greg did. Unfortunately, the way the schedule played out for Greg, it just played in his favor to where the Massacre ended up playing the Jesters there at the end and got that got the L, which propelled the Dragons into playoffs, but almost mirror seasons of each other where they both were kind of looking strong in the beginning and then took a big nosedive towards the end, unfortunately. Let's get to the power rankings, the final one, the 2023 season. By the way, if you didn't notice, in the top right corner, that's our logo for Fantasy Bowl 20 that yours truly made. So kudos to me. No, I'm just kidding. 9-4 Sharks ended up top the power rankings. Bombers end at number 2. And Jesters at 3 and Predators at 4. And yeah, that's pretty much the rest of it right there. By the way, team of the week we mentioned earlier. Let me pause 2. Team of the week. Look at him here. AJ looking very Christmas-like. I apologize. Got stuff going on here at home. Team of the week looking great. That's the way you want to finish the season. And let's take a look at that elimination cruise. Oh boy, not good at all. Nick, you are added on to the cruise, my friend. I'm sorry to say, not good. No bueno. Let's look at some season accolades. I'm sorry, I'm just a little distracted, but Nick, you do look stunning in this picture, by the way. I just want to say. And by the way, we will have a 2023 LSFL Cruise playoff elimination edition. So don't worry. If you have not graced the cover of the elimination cruise, don't worry, your chance is coming up here shortly. Let's look at the 2023 season accolades. Look at some of the best and brightest. Best record, Bombers and Sharks tied 9-4. Longest win streak right now. The Bombers are still on theirs, 6 wins. Grimace just lost, so that's done. Team of the weeks, Bombers and Predators both earned 3 points in a game. As I mentioned last week of the season, AJ pulled it out, 156.45. That was our biggest score of the and listen, AJ, by the way, and plus toot my own torn, 150 in a non-PPR league is absolutely amazing. Scoring champ was me, 1379.6. Dragons were money all year. He just started stumbling there down the stretch, thing a little overtake at that point. Speaking of the Dragons, comeback player of the year last year was 3-10. This season, 7-6 in the playoffs. Either way, it was the biggest differential from records. So it was a 4 games difference from last season. So our comeback player of the year is the New York Dragons. So a new award we'll make up every year. I like that. All right, now let's look at, we saw the accolades. Let's look at some of the unfortunate forgettables. Worst record, of course, Jose, 3-10, unfortunately. But this is where, like I said, things were a little skewed. Because if we really, and no offense to Eric, but if we're really taking a look at these teams, Eric by far was a toilet bowl. Like, he was the worst team, longest losing streak, got 7 losses in a row, pulled out a couple there at the end, and was the lowest points scorer for the whole entire season. 1090. So yeah, anyway, long story short, but like I said, unfortunately, for Jose, it wasn't enough. And the lowest point scorer, like I said, a big turnaround for Mike. First game, 36.2. Thankfully, scored that against me. So didn't have much to worry about week 1, but has definitely come, turned that season around, and a totally different looking team going into the playoffs. Like I said, hottest team in the league, wins six wins going into the playoffs and looking strong. All right, as I mentioned, unfortunately, that toilet bowl was Jose. Like I said, Eric definitely probably should be sitting over there with you, or maybe at least in the urinal. But unfortunately, Jose, the bum of the year, is taking a shit on the toilet bowl. All right, let's take a look at your 2023 LSFL playoffs. Believe it or not, week 14, got the play-in games this week, with the Eldorados versus the Bucks on the AFC side, and the Jesters versus the Dragons on the NFC side. In the wild card games, again, you got the Grimace waiting on the AFC, you got the Predators waiting on the NFC side, and as we before mentioned, AFC side Sharks waiting at that AFC Championship game, and the Bombers on the other side. So we talked about it. Let's get to it. The play-in game for the AFC, the LA Bucks at the Fort Pierce Eldorados. Line on this game, Bucks are favored by 2. The Bucks lead the overall series 6-4. Now, the Bucks won in week 10. That was 121-88. Now, I mentioned AJ earlier this year. He's that team you didn't want to face, because some weeks it would just be really bad, but some weeks was just outstandingly good. This was one of those weeks for him. This is actually their first meeting in the playoffs. The Bucks, this is their 12th playoff berth. They're 7-10 all time in the playoffs. That was one of AJ's bugaboos in the beginning, was not very good in the playoffs, but he has turned that around. The Eldorados, 5th playoff berth. We know they're going for their 3rd championship in a row, to be the 2nd three-peat in the LSFL. Of course, you know, my three-peat, of course, was tainted because of whatever fucking reason you want to think of. All right, so let's look at this matchup. I'm just looking. This is the first time I'm looking at, so excuse me for a second. But Dak Prescott, absolutely love that matchup. We know Philly's secondary is tough. Derrick Henry, though, against America's team on Monday night. Let me tell you something. One thing about the Miami Dolphins, all of a sudden this season, is not only is their defense better, but their run D been good all year long. So watch out for that Derrick Henry matchup. Achan's going to be interesting. You know, Titans D actually pretty decent as well. They're okay against the run. They're a little susceptible in the secondary, so you think you'd see a big 2 a night. But because this offense is so prolific, you know, obviously Achan, a little swing pass, he gets out in the open field. Bye-bye. Devontae Adams against Minnesota, that could be okay. Keenan Allen versus Denver, that's a good matchup for him. Taysom Hill could be a good play. With the injuries with Derek Carr and everything else, a question, so that could be a good one. We've seen him use him more as a tush-push player this week as well, so maybe you'll see a little bit of that. DK Metcalf at San Francisco. Gotta love this whole matchup. I'm sorry, anybody in this matchup is what I meant to say. Think you see a good back and forth with that one. Gotta love Houston's D. You know that if you've watched my show at all, you know I travel around for that any defense that's playing that Jets offense. Although got Zach Wilson back this week, but the good news for both of these defenses going into this game, it says definite showers. So it's going to be a wet, sloppy game. I actually think the Jets might upset the Texans in that one. Dicker the kicker, come on, gotta love it. Tua. As I mentioned, it was Fort Pierce Eldorado. Sorry, go for Fort Pierce Eldorado. Gotta love Tua, like I just mentioned. You know, susceptible in the secondary for the Titans. Does have Mostert, so you know, again, you know, we'll see how that run D goes. Tony Pollard. Oh, that's fine. I just realized they have both Dolphin running backs going against each other. Tony Pollard against Philly. Philly, number 1 against the run. So might be a little tough sledding there for Tony Pollard, and he's kind of up and down as it is. I like DJ Moore against Detroit. Puka Nacua against Baltimore could be tough. Like Hawkinson against the Raiders. Rashad White at Atlanta. Atlanta's surprisingly good D, believe it or not. I do like, of course, Miami's D. They've actually been number one in the past, I think, 6 weeks in fantasy. So crazy enough. And Jake Elliott, yeah, you got to like anyone in these high scoring matchups for a kicker. So going through the entire matchup and basically went over every freaking player that they may play, what they have at least now. Right now, projected 110 to 96 in favor of the Bucks. I'm going to have to lean towards that. I like their matchups a little more. As I really don't like Tony Pollard, but, and I don't like Derrick Henry, but he'll do, I think, better than Tony Pollard in this Philly matchup. And again, they have both running backs going against each other. Mostert gets the most carries, but Achane, he has the ability to make the most points, quite frankly, and the less of those carries. So, just going through the whole thing. I think the Bucks got a slight edge. It'll be an early exit for the one team to three-peat El Dorados. All right, let's get on to the NFC matchup where Greg, 7-6, like I said, stumbled his ass in the playoffs, going against the 8-5 Jesters. Jesters favored by 4, and now Jesters won this. They won now to face the Dragons, basically. They set this whole thing up. They could have lost and just faced the massacre if they wanted. Decided to win. They decided they want a little piece of Greg, so here we go. The Dragons lead the overall series 18-16, split during the regular season. Jesters won 125-92. Dragons won 98-89. Dragons are 1-0 in the playoff series. Last time they played was 2008. It was the NFC Championship. They won 73-71. Dragons' 9th playoff berth. They are 7-6. Jesters are 12th, and they are 8-8. Okay, well, let's look at this matchup on paper here. So my apologies, I'm just pulling this one up for the first time. So interesting enough, both these guys have their quarterbacks facing each other. So and in a great matchup. So you got Josh Allen at KC, you got Pat Mahomes versus Buffalo. I mean, hello, gotta love it. That could be interesting. Almost mirror images, I think, of each other with the starting RB1, Breece Hall versus Travis Etienne Jr. I mean, basically, we're kind of in the same wheelhouse. Now, the matchups are going to play a key role in this. Houston, again, this can be wet weather, so you should see a lot more Breece Hall in this one. Although, again, the Jets coaching staff should have had all Breece Hall in from day one. Travis Etienne Jr. against Cleveland, going to be tough because that Cleveland defense is tough as well. Okay, going to the RB2 matchup, Swift at Dallas, tough matchup. Kamara versus Carolina, surprisingly tough matchup as well, although Kamara has been hot as of late, number 2 RB last week. So we'll see. Jalen Waddle versus Tennessee, mentioned their secondary susceptible, although they've just been feeding Tyreek to get him that record, I think. Justin Jefferson is back for the Dragons, so I think he's got an edge in this matchup here against Las Vegas. Justin Jefferson is going to try to get off, I'm sure, his first game. Brandon Cooks, now I like this matchup for him against Philly. That's secondary susceptible, so that's a good matchup there. Nico Collins at the Jets, don't like the matchup. Wet weather. Jets secondary is great, so Travis Kelce on the Jester side versus Komet. I've got to give the edge a little to the Jesters there in that one as well. Obviously, it's Travis Kelce. Don't care about Buffalo. D and Cole Komet, Justin Fields are up and down. Could be a big day, but, we already know Travis Kelce is going to have a decent day. Adam Thielen in the flex versus Gabe Davis. And we're going to talk about another mirror image of each other. Adam Thielen, a little more consistent, I think, but as of late, not so much. So this one really is interesting, kind of a toss-up if you ask me. San Francisco against Seattle for the defense and Green Bay. So I'm going to give the edge to the Dragons in this, like the Packers matchup against the Giants versus the 49ers. D is great, don't get me wrong. But Geno Smith, it depends on what Geno Smith shows up. If they, who knows? This 49er team might be in for a letdown game. Just went to Philly, very high emotional game. Now we're coming back. That was a divisional opponent, so it's going to be hard to be let down for Seattle, who's actually pretty decent as well. So that could be good. And kickers are whatever. So very, 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 very slight edge, I think, to the Jesters. And it's only because if you go through the matchups, you kind of like one more of his than Craig's. But it's close. And even projections, I was wondering what they had projected. They had projected 97.3 to 97.1 in favor of the Dragons, actually, believe it or not. So this one is set to be close. It's going to be good. It's the first week of the playoffs. It's the play-in game, baby. So we doing this thing. Good luck to you guys this week. We'll see you on next week for the wild card edition. And we'll see who pulls it out in the playoff play-in games. Good luck to you guys. Like I said, for those that are on the elimination cruise, I hope you get your sunblock out. Enjoy the fishing. Don't worry, you're going to have a couple people joining you next week. We appreciate you, and we are out.